Hello and a very warm welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with me, I'm your host, I'm Rosie Moss. Joining me today from Edinburgh, isn't it? Edinburgh? Yeah, Edinburgh. I've got Renata Scofield. Hello, Renata. Lovely to meet you.
Hi, Rosie. Thank you so much for having me here today. Delighted
You're
to be speaking to you.
Me too. You're so welcome. And listeners, you may hear this lovely accent. Renata is from Brazil but lives in Scotland. So what an amazing combination that is.
I guess, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
originally from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, so very large city in a developing country. But yes, I've adopted Edinburgh as my home 15 and a half years ago.
Quite significant culture clash, right?
You can say that, but equally, there's a lot of commonality between the two
Oh,
that one wouldn't expect. Of course, the first question that I always ask is about the weather, but then I've learned how to layer,
yes.
and that's now sorted. But there's an element, a edginess to Scotland that reminds me of home. So yes.
Oh, who would have thought it? Because I've not been to, I've certainly not been to Brazil. I'd like to. I had a weekend in Edinburgh, which was absolutely beautiful. But considering how relatively close it is to us, I've not experienced enough Scotland. Anyway, this is not a travel podcast, is it? So Renata, I know a few details about your story. I know that your husband Colin died in 2023 from cancer, while your children were just 6 and 3, which is such a shitty age to lose their dad. I'm so sorry. Um, so just tell me your story, Renata. Start wherever you feel comfortable. I'd love to know a little bit about Colin, how you guys met.
Sounds good. So I moved to beautiful Scotland in 2010, pursuing a degree. I was 27 at the time, so I had lived most of my life in Rio, and I had been working for a few years. But I came over here on holidays in 2008, and I just fell in love with the place, and I figured, how can I move there? So I thought that education was probably the best way in, managed to get a scholarship, and the rest is history. So moved on my own in 2010, and in 2013, Colin and I met online. At that time, there was no swiping. It was still very much old school for online dating. But the interesting thing is that we lived a block away from each other. So we went to the same
Brilliant.
gym, to the same pub, like we were very much neighbors.
So you could have
Um,
bumped into each other in real life, as it were.
we could, but we
Yeah.
didn't. But yes, we met online, and a very it was very quick. And let's put it this way. So while there was no kind of pressure, and we were older as well. So by the time we met, I had just turned 30 and he was 43. By that time, I think life was already kind of shaped in many levels. Let's put it this way. And we eventually did get married pretty quickly because I got a job offer to go and do a position in Miami,
Wow.
for the company that I was working for at the time. So I sat down with him. I was offered a job when I was in London for a trip. I came back. I went to the pub with him and I said, "Look, this came my way. I kind of really want to take it. What do you think?" And he didn't blink an eye.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so supportive. And then, yeah, so there wasn't any kind of marriage proposal or anything around those lines. Frankly, I never thought I was going to get married either. But it was something that we kind of needed to do to be able to do this move together. So yeah, I organized a wedding and a move within 3 months. Did all of that very quickly. Doo, doo, doo. There's an interesting detail to this. We both owned our properties by the time we met. So we got married in October and then we moved in January, and we really only moved in together in January. So we were married for a couple of months and had never, actually lived
I
together
felt like
before.
old school of you, no living
Yeah.
in sin.
Exactly. So we did that. I thought that position in Miami would be there for maybe 3 years or so. But I frankly, it was me. I didn't love the city. I loved my job. but I struggled living in Miami after having lived in Edinburgh for a
Yeah,
while.
now that's a culture shock, right?
It was. My company was incredibly supportive as well. So fast forward a year, we came back. And when we came back, 2 months later, I was pregnant with my first. So from there, life moved pretty quickly.
Big
um,
change.
yeah, no, tremendous change. And the type of job that I did, I used to travel a lot. So there was that to just weave into the kind of new family dynamics that we were finding ourselves in as well. So fast forward to 2017, my firstborn lived. She's now 9. She was born in February that year. And then in 2020, just a month before the first lockdown in the
As soon as
UK,
anybody says 2020, you go, oh no.
yep. Zoe comes along. She's now 6. And yeah, we found ourselves. And actually, Zoe was born. And then 3 weeks later, we moved from our flat into the home that I'm in now. So it was, yeah, we moved a
Just
week before the
yourself,
first lockdown. I
Renata.
know, I know. But just to kind of illustrate, Colin and I were together for 10 years, but it was so fast paced. The amount of travel that we did in that time before kids and actually after the kids as well. And just, this kind of big life milestones in terms of changing jobs, promotions, moving house, moving here. It was, we conquered a lot
So I've
in
just
that
written down you
time.
packed in a lot of living.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, very much so. And frankly, at that time, from a career standpoint as well, my career grew a lot, and I could not have done that without Colin in the background. He really was that kind of solid element in my life that it was almost like I not only had something to lay on, but it was almost like he allowed me to bounce further, if that
It's
makes sense.
amazing. So
Yeah.
how, because you talked about having your girls and about this job that demands quite a lot from you in terms of travel and I'm presuming commitment as well. So how did you manage that? Was Colin quite a hands-on dad? Did you have other people helping you? How do you juggle that? Asking for a friend.
Yes. Um, Colin, frankly, he was the primary caregiver
Yeah.
in every sense of the word. He, as I said, he was a bit older than me, so he was able to actually hang around in the house a lot more. His job was also more flexible. He didn't have travel, frankly, and that was a big thing. But because he was like the dad of anyone's dreams, right? He loved being a dad so much. Like you would see some random guy walking down the street with a baby strapped in a sling and a big smile. That was him. So proud, so proud. So that was possibly for me personally one of the biggest transitions, right? Because frankly, by the time that he died, I was probably doing 30% of the parenting. He was really the person who was here all the time. And yeah, what a shift that was.
And for your girls as well,
Yeah.
because, and I say this, and I'm not diminishing the role that a father plays when they do the more kind of traditional gender role, where they're the one that works away or they're working long hours and they perhaps only see the kids at the weekends, maybe for bedtime. And, that they're doing their bit in their own way. But when a dad is really hands on like that, and Ben was like this too, he had his own business and, people used to say, why don't you grow? And he's like, I don't need to grow. Like I get to hang out with my kids loads. I'm happy doing this. And but the loss when they lose this really hands-on father, it has to be more significant, doesn't it? It has to be because it's their routine, their structure, everything else goes as well as this enormous loss of a parent. So it's kind of a mixed blessing because I'm so grateful my kids had that relationship with their dad and they have these memories and I've got the photographs and I've got a picture of Ben carrying them in slings as well. But I know that the loss was felt so much more acutely because of that.
Oh, really well said. Absolutely. I mean, I don't have a comparison, but I think you're spot on. On the flip side of that, I try to see things in different lights because sometimes I can be quite ruthless with something doesn't work for me. So why am I seeing things in this way, right? I, over time, started to realize that maybe I wouldn't have become the mother that I have become if it wasn't for those circumstances. And
Yeah,
the relationship that I do have with my kids now, oh my God, like,
strong.
because I was quite happy doing that. It was a good flow, it was a good balance, but it was a blind spot. And
You had
that
your teammate as well, didn't you? You had
I did.
somebody, and you know that for them, they just need a parent at home, right, or doing that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think how wonderful that you had the opportunity to have this career and without though, the restrictions. Because let's be honest, motherhood does place restrictions on our careers and our ability to go out and travel and earn money. And so how sweet in a way that you managed to do that, and then to be able to slot into the more kind of maternal role, if you like. But that must have been an enormous adjustment for you as well.
Oh, I was very much a reluctant mom for a good chunk of it. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as to say I had to learn how to be a mom, but yeah, the balance was clearly not there, and I had to reestablish that. And with the girls being so young, and I'm working full time, my family is in Brazil, and Colin's family is not really around. It was a lot. I was very much on my own. Particularly, I remember that very soon after his funeral, my dad, my sister, my cousins came around. I mean, they came to Edinburgh for the funeral, and I kind of just sent everybody away pretty quickly because in my mind it was a bit like, this is my life now.
I've
So
got to crack on with
why?
it.
Yes, yes. Why am I going to live in, or try to live in this rosy scenario that is not realistic, right? So straight head down into it,
Yeah.
and here we
Yep.
are.
So tell me a little bit about how. Well, let's talk about how Colin died. So he died from cancer. So when did he receive a diagnosis?
So cancer, yes and no. Actually, what took him was a stroke, but I'll
Stroke.
get
Yeah.
to that in a minute. But Colin was super healthy and asymptomatic. So I used to joke saying that I married a ninja. So Colin was a fourth dan black belt in jiu-jitsu. He practiced martial arts all his life. And that very much kind of, you could see that in his personality, just very calm, centered, nothing ever bothered the guy, right? So he was just,
Maybe I need
yeah,
to do jujitsu.
yeah, oh, yeah, sorry, and ninjutsu,
Oh,
ninjutsu,
ninjas. Oh,
yeah, so ninja, he was actually a ninja. I'm
an
not even
actual
joking about
ninja.
it,
That's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah. So, and very young looking for his age, and again, no symptoms at all. So we went to Brazil, to Rio, to see my family in Easter, April 2023. We came back on a Saturday. On the Sunday, I flew to London for work. Um, I on Monday he had an appointment to do some scans, and yeah, he called me that day saying they found something. So it was a very quick turnaround in terms of diagnosis. Um, I remember, Rosie, that the usual wording, the terminology was not shared with us. So they used words like they found a mass, not a tumor. They never said actually the word cancer to us, which is really weird as well.
Strange.
It is super strange. But I mean, I was in the office. Actually, I had flown down to London that day to welcome someone to the team that I had just recruited. And I had this conversation with him, and I just remember like pausing and like trying to process what I just heard. And then I was like, I need to go to the airport. And yeah, fast forward a few hours, I'm back home. Following day, we go see the GP, and yeah, it was very much, look, they found tumors in your kidney, and it's already spread to the lungs. We need to progress pretty quickly. Um, from there, surgery, like 6 weeks later, and he was such a champ. Like he took everything on his stride. Never complained, Rosie. The whole process, he never complained. I never seen the man cry, to be honest. And he started immunotherapy, which is still a new type of technology in the cancer space. And the narrative there was that the treatment was working. Um, Literally 5 days before he died, we met his oncologist, and the oncologist said, "Look, Some of your lesions in your lungs have disappeared. Some of them are shrinking. You're responding well. What they didn't pick up at that time was that it had actually spread to his brain. And which is it still gets me because how can you be responding well, but then it's not enough to actually
Spreading.
stop, yeah, spreading it elsewhere in the body. So basically, the narrative there was that you're very much like 6 months into a 5-year journey. He is strong, he's doing pretty well, and then he had a stroke, and he died overnight. I mean, not overnight. I mean, it was 6 in the morning when I noticed that he was feeling unwell in the bathroom. I called an ambulance. They took him. He was still talking at that time. He gave them his name and everything. And yeah, they took him away. And then I remembered I sat down, had a coffee, woke up my kids, took them to nursery and school. And I very much expected to go to the hospital and get an update, come back, make his bag for the night, and go back in. Um, and none of that happened. I basically got to the hospital and they took me into a room, and I was on my own. Um, and just basically said he's not coming home. The stroke affected his front lobe, which is very much your executive function. So he is not going to be able to breathe on his own. He's very much gone. Um, I made 2 calls, and in a matter of an hour, that room was filled with 20 people. All his friends came along. So I was never alone. Um, but yeah, he passed. It was around 8:30, 9 o'clock that night.
So
Um,
you've I'm reeling and I didn't live this. So you're staring down the barrel of cancer, which is fucking scary, right? Even if somebody's responding well, you know that your life is going to be taken over by this for a significant amount of time. You don't know how well he's going to be, but you've got hope. You've got all this hope there, you know, the positive response to the treatment. And then you were almost a sudden widow because it seems to have happened so out of the blue and so quickly. And I'm thinking of, you know, you sending him into the ambulance and, you know, that's presuming that's the last time you saw him coherent and conscious. That's that's so shocking.
it was one sentence that used to be a trigger, not anymore, was the last thing that the paramedic said to me that day or that morning was, "Don't worry, we'll take him in the blue light." And now, yeah, I don't get so triggered anymore, but still, every time that I see a blue light, I've always made way, right? But I think that my empathy goes even further because I do understand what someone in that position is like. But there is one thing, Rosie, that I would like to share that I think it's quite meaningful to me. So maybe a month before he died, we found that his immunotherapy treatment had burned his thyroid and had burned his pancreas. So he was diagnosed with diabetes type A and had to go into medicine or drugs for his thyroid as well. Um, when he got those two things, he kind of came back to himself. Like his last 2 weeks, I had my husband back the way that he was. And I think that is a very common story, isn't it, for someone who is sick? It's like just before they die, they are like, they come back to life. And that was certainly the case with him. And he was no longer taking our kids to school in the morning, just in the back of immunotherapy treatment. And the day before he died, he was well enough. And I said, "Why don't you do that?" So it was the first time in like 4 months that he took the kids to school. When he came back from that drop off, I kind of greeted him in the hallway, which is not something I did after 10 years of marriage, right? But I came to him and I said, I, I can't believe my luck. You're so incredible. And I'm just so grateful for how you're handling all of this and how easy you're making this for me. And I'm so, so proud of you. And that was my goodbye. So I even though it was sudden, I did say my piece. And
Yes.
hand on heart, like I I've done everything that was under my ability, not just during his sickness, but during the whole marriage. And that goes a long way when it comes to closure.
It's interesting you say that because obviously Ben wasn't sick, but we had a 6 month old baby. We were pretty, we were happy, but I wasn't meeting him in the hallway, put it that way, you know. And the day before he died, we'd been, it was Mother's Day. We'd been out for lunch with the kids, and we'd had the most incredible day. And I can remember saying to my mum, "I'm so lucky, I'm so lucky. I've got everything I ever wanted." Bittersweet now, but like you, I'm so glad that I acknowledged it, and we went to bed that night very much affectionate, and we'd had this feeling like, yeah, we're nailing this parenting three kids thing, we've got this. And I'm so glad, because in that early stage of parenthood, you could have gone to bed on a row, you could have been in separate rooms, you could have been up all night with the kids. And actually, I take some small but some comfort from the fact that we both knew how lucky we were and how in love we were. And that's my kind of lasting memory of him. But yeah, I mean, it's a small comfort, right? But it's some.
It's some. And I know I held on to that saying for quite a long time. I guess I still do. But yeah, the early stages of widowhood, you don't quite know what's coming your way, do you? Like, if you have kids, especially, you really don't know what's coming your way. So yes, now I agree with you. It's a small comfort. It used to be bigger, but yes, a few battles under my belt.
War wounds now, yes. So talk to me about these girls, because they were just 3 and 6. So they're at school and nursery when you get this, you know, earth-shattering piece of information. What do you do? Is there somebody that goes and picks them up? How do you navigate that?
I was on my own.
So you have to go and do the school run as if everything's normal. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely. Two drop-offs, two pickups. I still don't know how I did that. Working full time. I worked remotely, so that helped. But yeah, no, I didn't have any family around, and of course I have a phenomenal group of friends, right? But and I've
And
heard
even on the
news.
day he died, did you have to go and pick them up?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
So
So
mask on.
I I left the hospital because someone needs to go get their kids, and it
Life
had to be
keeps
me,
going. It's
right?
so
It had to
rude.
be me. Yeah, I know. How dare they? Um, and I brought the kids home, and one of the things that happened at hospital that day was that one of my friends very thoughtfully, how did they even come up with that? I don't know. They reached out to child bereavement charities while we were there. So I kind of left hospital with a couple of very useful recommendations and advice on how to manage the next steps. So that day, I remember a friend came with me to get the kids, and I was advised to be very open with them with what was about to happen, and to ask if there was anything that they wanted to say to that. None of them could read and write at that time, so they did drawings and things that then I took with me. And of course, I took it to the room, right? Because it's not a decision, but I had to make that call in terms of turning off life support. So went through that as well. One thing that I mean, I have no words to describe this. I have a cousin, also Brazilian, of course, but he lives in Amsterdam, Rafa, and when my family in Brazil learned what was happening, Rafa was in Schiphol airport in Amsterdam. He travels a lot for work as well. I think he was going to Luxembourg for a client meeting, whatever it was. He got a flight to Edinburgh instead. Um,
Wow.
so by the time that I was home with the kids, like he was on his way here. So I left my kids with a friend, went back to the hospital, and then in the meantime, my cousin arrived. So I actually had family nearby
Amazing.
on the day, on the day. But yeah, to the point you made, like no support. What I did pretty early on though, so I think it was May May 2024, I brought an au pair in.
Yeah.
She stayed for 3 months, and then I brought another au pair in, Flavia. She stayed for a year, and I have no words to describe what Flavia meant and still means in my life and in our lives, because it was another adult in the house with me, right? So
Made
it's
me go
not.
goosebumpy. The power of having somebody with you on this journey.
It goes a very long way, and it wasn't just the help that she it wasn't just the kids factor, right? It was actually my flag is Brazilian as well, so I was able to speak my own language. There is a different level of camaraderie and understanding. And Flaga sadly had lost a close friend at the same timeline, so it wasn't like we were both like sitting in grief in my living room, but there was a degree of understanding.
That comes
Um,
with a significant loss.
yeah,
We connect with other people. This is why the podcast, right? Because this is the connections. Oh wow! Did Flavia go back to Brazil?
she did. Yeah, she could
Oh,
only stay a year, but she's living the life now. She's a vet. So I have a dog as well. My dog was. I have a Labrador. She was a puppy when Colin died. She was one. So yeah, finding a vet that wanted to live in Edinburgh for a year, she was a godsend. And now she's living the life in the Bahamas, working in a wellness center with horses and things like that.
Bahamas.
So
Fair enough. I'd probably swap for Edinburgh for the Bahamas given the choice. But how wonderful that you found her. I wanted to look into getting an au pair, and it was a friend of mine that has an au pair, and she sort of said to me, Rosie, you can't bring somebody into the house at the moment. These are young people away from home, and the amount of trauma in your house, and it was carnage, I guess. But I do wonder how my life might have been had I pursued it and had I had somebody there that would just, like you say, not that you're going to necessarily sit and grind your wine every night with them, but just another person that you can connect with and somebody that cares about your children too. Because I imagine after living with you for a year, the bond was pretty tight between her and the kids.
oh, incredibly tight. And I think that was one assumption that I made as well. She turned 30 here, so she wasn't the
She wasn't
traditional
super
18.
young.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that makes a difference, right? Because I was able to go back to traveling for work because I had hand on heart full confidence on her ability to run my house. And I got to the stage that I was lucky enough to be able to actually go on holidays on my own and
Oh
have
my
someone to
goodness.
stay with the children. So, spend 5, 7 days away. Oh my God, that goes such a long way, doesn't it? Just to be able to put that
Switch off,
hat
because
of
a
your, yeah,
night isn't enough. It's not. And my parents are brilliant, and they'll say to me, well, no, I have to ask, but they will have the kids for a night every now and then. But it's not long enough because you're constantly thinking, oh, I've got to get up and go back, and yeah, a week away, I'm going to get myself an au pair. How do you? Although my eldest was 16 on Monday, so I reckon I'm inching closer to being able to have my own live-in au pair.
fantastic. Well done.
And what about when she went back? And I'm just thinking of how children who've experienced a loss, they can suffer quite a lot with separation anxiety. Were the children distressed when she went home? Did you find that they missed her a lot?
Of course, they do, but that's an interesting one, and I don't know if there was a degree of from a very young age, they knew that mommy traveled, right?
Yes.
So mommy wasn't around a lot. And then daddy dies. And then, the dog needs to go away because mommy cannot cope with two kids and dog, but the dog came back. So I think with these transitions, they've mastered them by
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And humans don't like change, but equally, change is the one thing that is guaranteed in life, right? So I think it's one of the silver linings for them is that they have learned from a very young age that things are transient. Life changes all the time. And gosh, what a gift that is, right?
Absolutely.
What a gift.
And I guess the fact that you've always travelled, so they know that mummy goes away, but she comes back. Because I think that was one of the things for my kids is, I guess, because I'd taken a career break to be with the kids. I was very fortunate to be able to do so, and but I've found now, as I'm now beginning to build up my business and I go away for work occasionally and I'm saying, actually, I've got to work this evening. It's kind of more of a shock for them, if you like, because they're not used to it. They're like, how dare you have a life outside of us, mum? But I do agree it's incredibly important because like you say, change is part of life. They're going to go through changes. People will come in and out of their lives, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. And actually, having that strong sense of self and knowing that, you're secure, that's what we want to instill in our children, isn't it? So that their sense of security is so strong that they can cope with change. Am I saying this? I don't know if I'm making any sense. Am I making sense, Renata?
I think you're spot on. It is that sense of security, but also of confidence on
Mm,
your own, right? And I think that we're always able, we always have enough choice and agency to see how we're going to frame things in our life. And I think I had that, sense of agency for a long time, but it has definitely strengthened after Colin died, and I passed this on to the kids. It's that let's focus on what we're gaining out of this. And by this, I don't mean to put our feelings under the rug and don't touch them. No, we absolutely deal with them, process them, but we being agile with our emotions, so not lingering, be that on the good or the bad, right? I think it's a life skill that really can go a long way because you know that things will change. There's a joke or a saying here in Edinburgh that goes, if you don't like the Edinburgh weather, you give it 5 minutes. It's a little bit like that life, isn't
yeah,
it? Just
yeah.
give it time. It will change.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking back to what you said about seeing the ambulance lights and that kind of additional empathy that you're now feeling. And I wonder as well, this terrible things happen to your children and we don't want it to completely define them, but actually one of the and I'm going to loosely term positives is the level of empathy that they have and that compassion and also an understanding that terrible, terrible things do happen. They learn that far too young, but that it doesn't have to destroy everything. They've watched their mums or their dads or whoever it is, the remaining parent, get back up, dust themselves down and carry on. And I think that's something that we are almost inadvertently teaching them is that resilience and that it doesn't mean the end of all that is good and you have trying to find joy in the world and adventure and trying to do things with them. And I think that is something that we are ultimately responsible for when this happens, and that's a huge responsibility. But it doesn't have to be massive. You don't have to take them backpacking around Thailand. I took mine to a caravan last week. They loved it. It's you can do it in sort of small incremental ways. I just wanted to ask if you've taken them back to Brazil on your own.
No, not yet,
I was
but
because that's quite the flight.
it's a big but though. We traveled extensively
Did you?
after Colin died. Yeah, I kind of wanted to. It's something I really like to do, traveling, and I
Same.
wanted to get like the first one under my belt to not be scared of traveling on my own
Yeah.
with them. So I don't actually know how many trips we've done in the last 2.5 years, but we just came back. I have a camper van, so I've driven all the
You.
way to Biarritz. So we did like
Wow.
2,500 miles in the Easter break in 2025, 2026. And we're about to go on a 3-month trip across Central and South America. Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah,
So are you taking them out of school?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I home educate my youngest. I mean,
Okay.
I say that quite loosely. She's at home. I've just had them out today to have a look and see what we're doing. But that was Ben had some investments when he died, and I won't go into too much detail, but these investments got lost. But I used to say I'm going to hire a nanny and I'm going to take the kids away because our life has been burnt down. Let's just go and make some incredible memories. And I've not done it, but I want to show them the world. I really do. And I want to show them that I'm capable of doing this with them. So one of the things I'm thinking about doing is maybe renting out my house and doing a house swap or something like that. Something because that would then fund me to be able to do these things with them because it's quite expensive when when they're not free flights anymore. These bloody kids.
No, that it can be, but yeah, that's
Camper
exactly
van.
what I'm doing. I'm doing home exchanges
Are you?
for now. Yeah, and it's worked super well. So I'm basically accommodation is free. There's someone coming to my house, right? But equally, there's someone coming to my house, so it's a good thing just to have the house not completely
This is being.
empty.
Do you leave the dog there?
No,
No.
the dog will be with elsewhere, but yeah, that dynamics. I mean, I'll tell you later if that works or not. But it feels like the right thing to do, and this is. because I am going through a particular point in my life where I have left my job, and I will be free enough to do that too. But before we get to that, I just wanted to kind of build a little bit on what you were talking about, us building resilience with the kids. And you're so spot on. I often think that they also teach us how to build resilience because, and I've heard some of your other guests kind of allude to this, how children grieve, right? And how they almost still have like that human spirit that is so intact. Um, so what I've seen my children do, and I know that it's a common thing. There's a name for it, so it's a common trait. Is the puddles and sunshine
Yes.
grieving process. So for someone who hasn't heard about that, it's essentially the ability that children have to be emotionally agile. They can be here in the puddle talking about the person that they lost. And then the next thing that they are dressed up as a butterfly and then they're
Or
flying
Harry
away.
Potter
So
in my case. Yeah.
exactly. So that that ability to just navigate emotions with such a healthy approach to it. I mean, us adults, we
You're
need to learn
right.
from that.
You're so right, because actually, when you allow yourself to grieve in these little incremental bits, you don't get that enormous overwhelm, that kind of tidal wave of grief. You know, I spoke to somebody and she said she puts on 2 songs and she can cry for 2 songs and then she has to pull herself together and get on with it. And it's so true, isn't it? The kids, they will. I was going back through some old photos because of my son turning 16, and Ben died in the March. Monty's birthday's in the April, and I did this Harry Potter, of course, Harry Potter party. And, you know, there's some pictures where I can see the real sadness in his eyes, and that breaks my heart. But then there's a little video where they're launching water balloons with like a sling, that's it. And the joy on their faces, the boys, you know, they're giggling and they're laughing. And I just think, wow, I'm so glad that his birthday wasn't ruined, you know, that he was still able to have a lovely time with his friends. And that's showing them that the joy is allowed to be there. And I think when you shut joy out of your life, when something, and it's tempting, isn't it? It's tempting to pull those shutters down and be like, look, everything's shit now. They're watching you. They're always watching you. So if they see you laugh with your friends, if they see you, you know, find joy in a beautiful sunny day, maybe not in Edinburgh, then they're learning from you that that's okay, that it's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You were talking about your son's party. It reminded me of a situation that happened. So Colin's funeral was in December, and it happened on a Monday. And on the Wednesday, my youngest at nursery had her nativity party thing.
Oh God, that's a
But I didn't. I had like, as you said, life goes on. Like the car had to go to the garage that day. I was running like a mad person, having just buried or cremated my husband. And I walk into that nursery without giving it a second thought. Like I didn't sit down and prepare myself for it. I walked in, and then I see these cute little kids all dressed up, singing their songs, and oh my god, like I had all the strength in me to not completely collapse. I had to call on that. I still cried a lot, but it was one of those early widowhood realizations, and probably one of the hardest ones for me, actually, Rosie, is that there's nobody else to witness your kids' lives.
oh,
So
I've not heard it put like that, but that's exactly it.
my kid, she was as happy as she could ever be, right? Um, but I was the only one in the room that she could gaze at, and I didn't have anybody to share the cuteness
Look
of the
to and be like,
situation
oh, look how
with.
cute they are. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
And I find I still do. I mean, my 2 eldest are at secondary school. My youngest is out of school, so I don't get many opportunities for these anymore. But I used to find those events really, really tough because you're so proud of them, and not everybody has both parents there. We don't live in a world like that, but most people will be 2 parents, and you know they're recording it and they're proud, and you're just thinking, oh, it's just me. And you make sure that you do enough for both of them, but it's that lack of witness. I really, really relate to that with all the milestones, all the, you know, my little one, she was a baby, so even those first steps, you know, who do you show that video to? Who cares as much as both the parents? I mean, people are mildly interested, but it's not an earth-changing event like it is for the parents when something like that happens. And that's, I think, where I struggled with the isolation and the loneliness of being on my own with them.
Oh, Rosie, you didn't say this on today's episode, but you normally say, "Hi, I'm Rosie, and I'm always here." And every time I hear that from you, it touches really deeply because it is the for me. I don't know if this is what you mean, by the way, but for me, it's that yeah, I am always
Always here.
here. It is the loneliness of
Yeah.
there's no one else,
No.
and you can feel sorry for yourself, right? Because that doesn't work in your favor either. So what do you
And that
do?
and you can get resentful, and I'm guilty of it. At Christmas I got resentful, and I put a post up and I was like, I think it was a AI picture of, me with goggles on looking for my village, because I felt, I had a case of the poor me's. I was like, this isn't fair. Ugh. But you can only sit in that for so long, because
Yeah.
otherwise that destroys you. And you have to, like you've said, you have to find the things that you're grateful for. I spoke to a wonderful woman recently, and she talked in great depth about gratitude. And I'm aware of it as a concept, but the way she spoke about it and how important it is and how it really shaped the journey of her husband's cancer death was really, really powerful, actually, and something that I perhaps should and will incorporate more into my life. It's realizing how lucky am I that I got to go to the nativities. How lucky am I that I get to celebrate their birthdays instead of poor me having to do it all on my own. It's not always easy, let's be honest. It's not, and you're allowed to have these poor me's, but if you can reframe that, you're going to live a much happier life.
I often think like how worse can this get? And then I quickly think, well, Colin could have had his stroke while driving the kids to nursery, right?
Right? Yeah.
So it can always get worse. There is a professor scientist from Stanford, author as well, called Paul Conti, that, and I really like his work. He's a psychiatrist, um, and he recently released a book where he talks about joy and how long-term joy, and I'm careful here to not use the word happiness, right? But how long-term joy can really be sustained if you have agency and gratitude. So agency is still you still feel like you have a degree of control over things around your life, or even if that's just how you respond, right? But equally gratitude for the things that you do have. And when I heard that, oh my God, joy is equals gratitude plus agency, that
Makes
was like,
sense.
oh wow, it makes a lot of sense.
And it also explains, why joy is so very difficult to come by, because we talk a lot about being kind of infantilized by widowhood, and a lot of your agency gets stripped away. People make decisions for you. You can't control what's happened. And I mean, I lent very heavily on my parents. I was very lucky they were able to be there for me. But I felt like I had no control over where my life took me next, about what happened to us. And then as I clawed back that control, everything did start to feel a little bit better. And it's not perfect, but yeah, and sometimes I do lay in bed, and when you're starting to feel a bit wallowy, and I do think to myself, I'm healthy, my kids are healthy, we have enough food, enough for it. It doesn't have to be these enormous gratitude. It can just be, I remembered to buy milk yesterday, I don't need to go to the shop. Grateful for that, right? Um, Renata, how did you? Sorry, I've just conversation swerved, but my brain is percolating on this concept of how busy you were with work and how demanding your career was, and how, because I know you're no longer working there, but how did you manage to reconcile that in the last couple few years with being a full time mother as well?
Oh, it's it's a chapter of my life that I think I'm only just beginning to comprehend, not only how I did that, but also the kind of long-term growth and learning that I'm sure I will. If you ask me again in a year, I'll probably have a different view. Um,
Come back, Renata.
I will, maybe life. So yeah, I had this intense job. I was
She
40
do.
when I'm a sustainability professional, so I've worked my whole life 24. So I'm not 25, but I've worked for 25 years in the corporate
Yeah.
space. Have had a number of different mini careers in that. So I've moved from operations to investment banking to working for a very large drinks business in the UK. And my last position was as a senior director of sustainability in a large pharmaceutical company. So I was basically part of a team that was looking to help the organization manufacture medicines and vaccines in a more sustainable way. Um, so basically, Colin dies. I was out for 7 weeks in total, and that stretched across Christmas and New Year's, where everything's a bit slow anyway. And I went back in February. That's also my birthday. So when Colin died, I was 40. And then suddenly I found myself as a senior leader and suddenly a solo parent. Um, Solo parent to grieving children while you're grieving yourself. I don't know about you, Rosie, but I sometimes hear the comparison between people who have gone through a separation or a divorce. It's not the same,
It's
right?
not.
It's
No,
not the
it's
same.
not.
Yeah.
Even if the father isn't in their lives, you're still not dealing. They might be grieving in a different way the loss of a father, but it's not the same. And I was talking to the kids. Sorry, I've gone on another tangent. I was talking to the kids. I think my daughter overheard me say something. Oh, I hate it when people say things like golf widow. You know, when somebody's gone to play golf for the weekend. You're not a widow. You just haven't got your husband for 2 days. Like, pack it in.
Ah, gosh, yeah, I'm going to go on another spiral, but yeah, I
Yeah,
had
do I like a spiral?
people at work saying to me, "Oh, I know what your life is now because my husband went on a cycling trip for 3 days." It, you want to believe it comes from a good place, right? A place of trying to feel a degree of empathy, but equally, yeah, it's not the same thing.
No, and I'm a real
Um,
advocate of using solo parent rather than single
yeah.
parent as well.
And I tend to correct people in a very blunt way
Yes,
as to why
yes,
it's so.
yes, yeah. Yeah, you got to get your kicks
Um,
somehow or another.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I'm glad it's not just me. But yeah, so I found myself as a 40-year-old, Jesus, a 40-year-old, and I had quite a senior position in the organization, and along with my kids. And I guess I expected a global organization to have a playbook, a protocol for crisis leadership, right? And instead, Rosie, what I encountered was a leadership vacuum where my role in the space of 7 weeks had been dismantled because they didn't know how to navigate the discomfort of my situation. And a leadership that absolutely confused my circumstances, my temporary capacity, with my permanent competence, so my skills. So, in a nutshell, I was in line for a promotion in that company, very much on top of my game. So, these conversations around next steps were happening a couple of months before Colin passed. He dies, and the narrative shifted instantly. There was an assumption that I was no longer leadership material. The most shocking thing for me was this assumption that my skill set kind of evaporated the moment that I became a widow.
Yeah, all
And
those years of work and study and experience.
and delivery, right?
Yeah,
And I clearly, if you become a widow, you don't lose your intelligence. You just gain a kind of new set of life circumstances. So another thing that was quite difficult to manage, and this only came in hindsight, right? So when you're living through it, especially because you're still kind of in the shock phase, right, of everything that you're dealing with, but the management framed that decision as protective, right? So we're doing this for you,
for you.
but removing your agency and my career path without my consent really was secondary loss, right? It wasn't protection. So I do
Absolutely.
believe very strongly that real leadership doesn't decide for you what you can handle. It asks you what you need. Now, granted, early widowhood, sometimes you don't know what you need, but equally, don't pile on the losses, right? Don't ask for yet another adjustment, yet another thing for the person who is grieving to figure out where to get the energy to fight for. That is just cruel. in
And
so
that's the
many
other
levels.
thing. You really haven't got the energy to fight a decision made at that level. And I've just written down here man question mark, and I'm just wondering whether a man would have been given the same treatment in this situation if his wife had died.
Um, Probably like yourself, I've got into several widowhood groups to try to find people going through similar. No, the short answer is there is all the men that I have met. No, none of them have gone through anything similar. So it's a very very provocative point you make. And there is, I just wanted to call out that this thing about framing it as protective, there is a term for that. There's terminology that it's very well known in the diversity, equity, and inclusion world, and that's benevolent bias, right? So I'm not here arguing or questioning the motives or the intent. Maybe it did come from a good place, right? So let's give that the benefit of
Maybe.
the doubt. But even if it came from a good place, there's still consequences, right? So what I've witnessed was really a masterclass on how to not handle talent
Yeah.
during a big life transition. And this kind of widow bias that you slightly touched there in terms of the gender bias as well, I think that leaders still probably need to go a long way in terms of realizing that work is often a link to normalcy, and
Yeah.
it's not a burden to be removed, right? I went back to work 7 weeks later because I wanted to be at work. I wanted that degree of my life has just been turned upside down. Let me hang on to the things that I know that I do well, only to have that
Actually,
stripped away.
and primarily the men that I've interviewed, they have said that to me that going back to work was what they needed. It gave them the structure, it gave them normalcy, it enabled them to be the work persona rather than this grieving husband or father. And but actually, for women, it is that kind of assumption that we stop our careers, we step back, but actually with you had a really good support system in place. You had an au pair. I mean, not maybe not right at this point, but you could make this work and you wanted to make this work.
Getting the affair was largely due to work. So as I mentioned before, the type of work I did require a lot of travel, and it was one of the first questions I had: how am I going to do all this travel? Obviously, I needed a different level of support in the house, and yes, looking for that and making that work was very much part of showing up to the business to say, I'm here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't assume, don't judge, don't. And but I think, and I've heard you say this in other episodes as well, it's almost like you're contagious, right? It's almost like you are now, because a lot of the other people who were my peers in the same level of leadership that we were had not too different lives to myself, so kind of ballpark similar age group, kids, sometimes teenagers, sometimes young. And then you kind of become this mirror of like, oh, my life could be
Could
like
happen.
that. And it's easy to want to avoid that, isn't it? Because you don't want to see that. It's ugly and it's uncomfortable. And I don't want to hear or see how you're managing, even though you're so strong.
Yeah. And do you think there's a concern? I mean, I'm hypothesizing here. I obviously have no evidence of this, but there's an element of, but you're going to be called out of work more. You're going to have, if your kids are sick, what if you have to miss a big meeting? Do you think there's an element of that plays into this?
Possibly.
Mm.
But then again, what ifs, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, life, you and I know, goes in a blink. I could, yeah, things can change so quickly. So I think that bottom line, Rosie, what I saw was just a lack of preparation. There wasn't um, structure to support
No.
employees going through transition. And I mean, most large organizations will have a channel for complaints, right? But this kind of escalation process will drain the life out of you. And very often it goes nowhere. So the decision that I made was with the limited bandwidth, emotional, cognitive, that I have right now, my kids need me. I am not going to, choose this path to fight a battle that I know it will go nowhere. So I think for me, the real important thing to talk about this is to kind of raise awareness, of course, but
Really.
also to speak out in a way that the next woman that is in my position doesn't have to fight for her job while she's also fighting for her family, right? Um, and to kind of just wrap this up, I've been reflecting a lot on this, Rosie, on what could be done differently, right? So there's three things that come to mind. Um, One is that in the workplace, right? Be that a small, medium, large organization, it doesn't really matter. We're all people at the end of the day. Um, Choice is the greatest form of support. So the most protective thing a leader can do is to return the agency to the person who has just had their life shattered, right? Never assume you know what a grieving employee can handle. That is projection through and through. And this argument that we're moving into a less demanding role for your own sake is really not healthy. Um,
Infantile.
I'm
It's like being parented, isn't it? We're going to do this because this is best for you.
100%. That's exactly what it is. And actually, what a person in your team who has, contributed so much um, probably wants to hear is we value you.
Yeah. Or
Let's
even we're going to give you something less demanding temporarily. You know, was that even on on the cards?
the word temporary didn't come through.
No.
So what happened was the first conversation that I had, this was like 2 days before my return, was very much an imposition. It was line management's not coming back. So in that team, I had the largest number of direct reports, the largest budget. And the first thing I heard was line management's not coming back, your budget's not coming back. And by the way, I didn't even know that they had gone. um, but it was very much like your role is too big, and there is a sense of if your scope is not delivered, the whole agenda of what we're doing will be at risk. So we need to move you to this area here that, frankly, doesn't deliver anything. Nobody really cares, and was not allowed with my skill set. So I actually had to learn at a time when your learning agility is really low. No,
Forgive me if I'm overstepping the mark here, but was there a financial implication as well?
no,
No.
no. I wasn't demoted, or I
But you didn't
wasn't.
go for the promote. You didn't get the promotion, which presumably would have brought more financial reward with it. So although
Correct.
you have it's not been taken away, it's kind of been in a way.
Correct. And I just to give a sense of timelines here. That whole battle, for lack of a better word, and lasted 2.5 years, right? So between Colin dying, me coming back to work, and finally deciding to leave, that was 2.5 years. And when I decided the fight is over, I'm stepping out, someone else got that appointment of that promotion that was coming through, and I knew it was always going to be between the two of us, and that's fine. It was known, but I wasn't given a chance to fight. I wasn't given there was just that assumption that, yeah, as I said before, you're not leadership material. So which actually brings me to the point number two that I had, which is grief is not a disability. It's a
Oh, that's true.
transition. It's a transition.
And we don't
So
stay here forever. We don't stay in that acute grief forever. You couldn't. You'd die. You couldn't live with it. So it is temporary.
it is temporary. And to write off a high performer or not, it kind of doesn't matter, but to write off a member of your team in kind of the winter of their life, um, it's something that others are watching as well, right? So, which actually leads me to my third point, which is corporate culture is revealed in the edge cases. And what I mean by that is that leading a happy, healthy, stable team is piece of cake, right? Real leadership can only truly be measured, but how you handle these edge cases, the deaths, the illnesses, the crisis, and the treatment that you give a grieving employee is really very much a cultural signal to the entire company. So that toxic response to grief really has the ability to poison the well for everyone else. There is a term in corporate that gets thrown up a lot, which is psychological safety. So how do you create a space of psychological safety to your employees? That cannot be a poster in the wall, right? That's very much not just a signal, but I guess how you treat the weirdo in the room will very much send a signal to the whole organization about what could happen to them if something else happened to them, to their
And
lives
I'm
as well.
and I'm thinking, if somebody was going through a personal crisis, mental health crisis, or many, none of us are immune from tragedy and crisis, then they might then not be willing to bring that to the workplace and talk to their line manager, because they've seen what happens in real time when
Yeah.
somebody goes through something, and yeah, it feels unbelievable. You need to like create some sort of document or speech that you can go around. Like I see a career for you here in changing the world around corporate approaches to grief, because there really is so much more that needs to be done in this arena.
Do you know, it's funny you say that because I was before coming into the conversation with you. I was like, what if she asked me? Great, what are you going to do about that now? As in, like, I can see what you're saying, right? There is an opportunity right now, Rosie. I think you're right. I think that there is an element of education that could potentially go a long way and really help people and corporates. But right now, my focus is more around helping um, people in general with mental fitness. So it's not mental health, but it is about that element of finding the right space between well-being and high performance in a way that you're mentally fit, just like you are
Mm-hmm.
physically fit, right? Um, I feel like after going through what I've gone through, and I say this with a lot of humbleness and a lot of care, and by all means, it doesn't mean that I don't feel my feelings. I do, but I didn't collapse. I and one could say, of course, you had kids, you can't collapse, right? But you
You
can,
can.
you can. And I didn't know um, how much, yes, resilience, grit, emotional agility I had built throughout my life until life asked that of me. And that was a awakening. And yes, there's things that I have done for decades that help, which is, namely, it's not surprise, but sleeping well, eating well, moving, and in my case, meditation. So those four things do go a long way. But I'm now in this kind of mission to amplify the message that, look, don't let the curveball come to start to build your mental fitness. You can build your mental fitness, and when the curveball does come, you are fit,
Yeah.
and you can respond that from a much stronger place, right? So I think that my focus for now is less about helping corporates figure out how to do crisis leadership, but more about helping people that might be going through crisis to strengthen their resilience.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm guilty of this. I know the things I need to do to keep my mental health in check. I know I need to move my body, eat well. And when I'm feeling good, I forget to do it. And then, of course, it comes again. I'm like, oh shit, I need to go for a walk, and it's really difficult. But if you can sustain that, then you never have to go back to the beginning and start again, do you? It's easier to keep going than it is to stop and start again. I must kind of mentally remind myself of this. And is this what you do now? Because you mentioned meditation. Is that something that you did prior to Colin dying, or is it something that
Yeah.
you've? Yeah, okay.
For years, for years. So one interesting thing was that when Colin's situation unfolded, or the diagnosis, I kind of amped up my meditation from 20 minutes a day to an hour daily. And honestly, that was one of the most fundamental things in terms of how I coped on the aftermath. Um, I I started visualizing things. I guess, Rosie, I would not say this out loud, but I started preparing myself to be a solo parent. I could see that that was going to come my way, and I started, yeah, visualizing, visualizing how
I like
life.
that word.
It's a good one, isn't it? How life could possibly turn out, and it wasn't Plan A, right? So yeah, that for me and breath work, a number of different breath work techniques. I've now qualified as a professional breath worker as well.
You.
Yeah, I have.
That's
Yeah,
interesting to know because I might have to talk to you about this at some point for something
sounds
I'm
good.
I'm working on. Yeah. But I started doing the Wim Hof type breath work with the hold, and I find that that really calms me down. I mean, I very typical of an ADHD. I bought an ice bath and all sorts. It's sitting out there slightly green. You know, we don't talk about the ice bath, but you want to heal, don't you? So you try everything, and essentially, I found the things that really work for me is getting outside, getting some light exercise, dog walk. It doesn't have to be, park fit or a boot camp, and getting enough sleep. It really is those kind of basic fundamentals that are so easy to overlook when you're grieving. Because I don't know about you, when the kids go to bed, and then I would sit up really late because that was the only time I ever got to myself. Whereas now and it was actually my counsellor that suggested, why don't you take that time before they go to bed? When they're gaming or watching TV after dinner and they're chilling, why don't you go into a different room and have your kind of alone time then? And then you go to bed when the kids go to bed, which is kind of tragic, really. But they'll
Uh,
leave home. They'll leave home one day.
that's my life, though. Yeah, I'm with your therapist. It's there's also the downside of that because they come home from school. So they've, I mean, not your youngest, obviously, but um, yeah, you've not seen the kids because they're at school, and then they come home and you're like, I want to take this 1 hour to myself.
Yeah.
But I think that those moments, be that at that point in the day or a different point, it's the self care element of things, right? If you don't care for yourself, you and I don't know how you feel about that. I'd love to hear, Rosie, but that weight that is so hard sometimes to explain to others of being the only parent, that if you collapse, the house collapses, right?
So cards falls down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got really bad health anxiety because I thought, well, what happens if I'm sick? And even two of my kids had horrible colds over the Easter holiday, and my daughter sleeps in my bed, and I'm like, because I just thinking, I can't, even a cold, it'll derail me. Nothing will get done. The washing won't get done. Everything falls apart. And I think when you say you're tired as a widow, and your friends might go, oh yeah, me too, I'm knackered, work's really stressful, and you're like, no, I don't even know. There needs to be a new word for this level of tired. It's like, I mean, even this morning, I stupidly fell asleep after my alarm went off, and then I've just been chasing my tail all day, and just everything, it feels kind of discombobulated, and it's tired on a cellular level, isn't it? You can't describe that tiredness.
It's, I mean, I think women in general, we already have a degree of mental bandwidth when we become moms, right? That we think about a number of different things all the time. And that gets to a different level when
Yeah.
you're on your own. I was actually in the last couple of days, like I had electricians, I had gas engineers, I had like there is those small things in life that I don't understand why. That's everybody's life. Everybody who has a home will have, yes, sure, but that is on top of A, B, C, D, E,
Yeah.
and it's nonstop. And I've heard you say this in a different interview as well. It's um, people will offer help, right? And that is lovely. And oh my God, so grateful for everyone that has extended a hand, and I will always be grateful. There's an element of not having anybody else in the house because when you really need help, you
Yeah.
can plan for it, right?
No.
It's at the, I don't know, 2 a.m. tantrum that is thrown because
Yeah.
someone woke up vomiting and,
Yeah,
being
yeah, you're
chucked out
stripping the
today.
bed on your own at 3 a.m. Or, my boiler broke over Easter. We've been having cold bloody showers, and that was like the final straw. I've got a really old house and it gets cold, and I just wanted to put the heating on, but we're okay. It's fixed. It works again. We're here.
Yes, no, absolutely. Sorry, that boiler story reminded me. But Colin was very tech forward, let's put it this way, right? So we renovated his house, and he decided he wanted to make it a smart house.
Oh,
And I,
don't.
of
I've got
course,
smart stuff. Oh,
it's not smart at all. It's very dumb. Anyhow, he dies, and he controlled a bunch of these things because then again, he was the person in the house. And I mean, when you are in a marriage, there's a natural split
you
of
split. Yeah.
things, right? And he dies, and then this is end of November in Edinburgh, and I couldn't put my heating on because he controlled that from his phone.
Oh, I bet you
Um,
were cursing, Colin.
Oh, I still curse him daily. The lights they go on sometimes. So there's so many of these little things. And actually, if you don't mind, just one thing before we wrap up, um, as a piece of advice that I think I would like to have had, I guess. But you never plan for these things, so it's a bit redundant in a way. But um, if I could leave others with a few thoughts around preparation, right? Preparation is not something morbid. Preparation
No,
is love,
it's
right?
practical.
So it's practical. Um, so things like wills, power of attorneys, if you can afford life insurance, right? These things go a long way. And these are the well-known ones. The ones that are perhaps less well-known is your digital life. Um, I didn't have Colin's passwords. He didn't have my passwords. We were just not that kind of couple, I guess. Nothing to hide, but we just didn't share
Yeah.
passwords. And he was an amateur photographer, and oh my God, he was so good at it. And
You
I
can't get
don't
them.
have access to all of his pictures
Oh,
because of how organizations deal with data privacy. So even as his executor of his
you still
state,
couldn't get
even
them.
with a death certificate, it doesn't matter. Apple, in particular, told me that I needed a court order, which is a bit like, yeah, that's laughable. And that's such an American language as well. Like in the UK, I reached out to 3 lawyers asking about it, and like nobody has even heard about it. So yeah, it's a thought to share. You don't need to share. It's a thought to leave people with. You don't need to share your passwords. Apple, in particular, your Apple devices will
Legacy
have
thing,
set the
haven't they?
legacy. Yeah, exactly. So that can be set up. And if you don't have an Apple, then I encourage you to, just figure out what the situation is. But so much of our lives is digital, and to just
So
lose all of
right.
that
Yeah,
is
you're so
painful.
right. I had Ben's password and then I forgot it. I completely forgot it. And so I did manage to get into his phone and get, contacts and pictures. And I'll tell you what was lovely is how nicely he spoke about me and the kids. He wasn't moaning about, which was because you also, when you go through somebody's phone after they died, it's a bit of like, oh shit, what am I going to find out here? But then I forgot it. And then I couldn't get back into it. And I didn't want to completely lock myself out. But I think, in a way, perhaps for me, it was good because I think I could have spent too much time living in this little block of memories, if you like. But that's really, really good advice, actually, just to think about that digital life that we lead and being able to give people access. My best friend's got my phone password because, I always said you've got to have somebody to delete anything a bit risque before it falls into the wrong hands.
I've completely changed how I manage these things as well, and yeah, like my life now is completely safe for lack of better word. Like if something happens to me, oh my God, like people in my family know where to go, what to do.
Yeah.
Everything is written down.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not morbid. It's actually love. I love that expression. It is love. There was somebody I interviewed quite early on, and her husband's way of dealing with his terminal illness was to kind of go through everything, write letters, make sure everything was. It was like his way of taking back control, I guess, an agency of what was happening to him was to leave it as organised and accessible for his wife and children as he could. And I think that's a real kind of declaration of love and devotion, I think.
Yeah, uh, we
Hindsight's a
talked
wonderful
about
thing,
this.
hey?
Yeah, we talked about this in the beginning. I mean, you and I both had that chance of like being grateful just before life completely changed, right? I get really happy when I hear stories like that of people that actually have gone further in terms of what they leave behind. In our case, even though there was a cancer diagnosis, the narrative was positive. So I don't think it even crossed our minds to do something for the kids because we were not in death mode. And
No.
similar to you, you're sudden, so you're
Yeah.
not in death mode either.
And some people don't want to. They don't want to confront their impending death, and that's also understandable, isn't it? Oh, Renata, I would like to carry on talking to you, but unfortunately, I have to go and get my dog from the groomers, and I'll get told off if I don't go. So, but I'm very keen to have you back again. Actually, I'd love to see what your life looks like in a couple of years. You seem like an absolute powerhouse of a woman. I'm excited to see where life takes you, and I really want to thank you for speaking so candidly about something that I've not really spoken about so much on the podcast, which is about what happens when you go back to work and the environment isn't welcoming and supportive for you. So thank you for talking about that, and also for sharing your story. You've spoken really, really eloquently and beautifully about Colin and about the father and the husband that he was. And I hope that you feel like you've done yourself proud, because you really have.
Thank you for having me, obviously, Rose, for holding space so beautifully, and for all the work you do. Honestly, the message that you get across through your platforms, I'm sure it's incredibly helpful to so many people out there. So thank you for doing this, and I'd love to be back one day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're being like this widowed warriors here. We've got a full tribe going on. But for anybody that has been listening today and has been affected, please do reach out. My Instagram is widowed_AF. And if you've got anything you particularly want to speak to Renata about, I can absolutely pass anything over to her as well. But until next time, you lovely lot, you take care of yourselves and each other. And I will be back with you next week. But for now, it's bye from me and bye from Renata. Thank you for listening. If you found this episode helpful, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you think someone else may benefit from this, please do share. We'd also really appreciate a quick review. It helps more people find the show.